From prolonged droughts to devastating floods and landslides, communities across Uganda are increasingly feeling the effects of a changing climate. But as the impacts grow, the question is no longer only about how to respond to disasters, but also how to build a more resilient and sustainable country. It is against this background that the Ministry of Water and Environment is conducting consultations on Uganda's Nationally Determined Contribution 3.0, which sets out the country's commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions while strengthening adaptation and resilience to climate change.
This is a planning meeting. And the aspect of equity, I think they are going to be very important. People-centeredness is very important, and ensuring that whatever we are doing it in the interest of our country, our people, in the line of sustainable development.
The ministry says the new NDC is at about 85% complete, with consultations being held with civil society and other stakeholders before the document is finalized.
So moving ahead, we are going to do consultation for the private sector, and then we shall do a national validation, and then we shall subject the NDC to political approval processes, where we shall take it to Parliament and Cabinet to pronounce the final approvals of government. So we have the draft, and it's what is going to be consulted on. So apparently I could say that we have done over 85% of what is required of us to do, and we are targeting to complete this process by end of September. We should have an approved nationally determined contribution.
The new NDC, which will be the second for the country, also introduces additional areas of action, which include interventions on short-lived climate pollutants such as black carbon, protection and maintenance of peatlands, and measures in the oil and gas sector to reduce methane emissions.
So the measures under oil and gas are not GHG in nature, but they are just mitigation measures that could respond to what would be the impacts of exploration of oil and gas.
Semambo adds that the adequate resources, particularly climate finance, are critical if Uganda is to effectively adapt to the impacts of climate change.
Then it is also a tool which helps us to mobilize international and domestic climate change resources. Because if you don't have the NDC, it means that you don't know your priorities, you don't have your commitments. So whoever wants to give you resources in the mainstream climate change financing mechanisms, like the GF, the adaptation fund, name it, you must demonstrate that you are going to implement the national commitments.
Stakeholders say Uganda's climate action must ultimately translate into improved livelihoods and stronger communities.
In those many commitments, the actions and targets, they must be people-centered. Because at the end of the day, for us to ensure that we reduce on the greenhouse gas emissions, for us to ensure that the population is resilient enough, for us to ensure that the population out there can be in position to mitigate the impacts of climate change, to ensure that they can adapt to the impacts of climate change, they must understand what has the country prioritized.
It is about adaptation and resilience. Colleagues, we all know that adaptation in this country, because already we are experiencing impacts of climate change, it cannot in any way come secondary. Let us be very critical about this, and therefore whatever priorities are being set, they should be grounded in the local realities, and at the end of it, strengthen resilience.
Many communities still remain very vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. This reality suggests that the scale and pace of adaptation actions has not been sufficiently met.
The United Nations Development Programme says it remains committed to supporting Uganda's efforts to strengthening community resilience.
Let us work together to strengthen national adaptation capacities, accelerate climate resilience, increase Uganda's commitment to greenhouse gas emission reductions, and advance our shared commitment to a sustainable and prosperous future.
I'm Benjamin Jumbe, NTV Tonight.